So I just want to kind of go through, in this series specifically, just go through the entire timeline, man, because there's a lot to talk about that isn't in the game. There's about, I don't know, 10 or so pages of stuff that happens outside of just the games.
And I am a what would we call a, I don't know, what would you call me, a casual fan?
Yeah, you know,
I'm
intermediate.
a little higher. Yeah, okay, yeah.
You're intermediate fan. Casual. Yeah. You're not a novice. You know the characters.
I've beaten all the mainline, series.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. I never actually beat son of a bitch. Peace Walker. I never actually finished Peace. I've played a shit ton of it. That game is just, like, it gets to a point where it just sort of is the same stuff very much over and over again.
Yeah, V kind of had that same problem near the end.
Yeah, I was like grindiness to it.
Well, to get the true ending, you have to grind tons of AI pieces. But yeah, we're not talking about Peace Walker yet. We're going to start at the very, very beginning. At the end of World War One. That's how far this goes back. Basically, today we're just going to go over end of World War One to the beginning of Snake Eater. So that's 1918 to 64. Not really a lot of stuff, honestly.
Nothing really happened in that time frame.
Nothing. Joy has a surprising amount, or the boss. She has plenty of backstory that, I mean, you might not be aware of, but it's nice how much there's some deep cuts you have to look for, but they flesh her backstory out pretty well. So yeah, we'll start at the end of World War One.
Something tells me I'm gonna enjoy this.
Hopefully you won't be sorrowful. Don't fear, it will end soon.
What?
So 1918, what would become the Philosophers are founded. They're kind of, let me just read it. A secret organization originating from a treaty formed by a clandestine gathering of authority figures from America, post-revolutionary Russia, and China. They would China. They would later be known as the Wise Men's Committee.
I don't know why that got me so bad. It's so repeated and like
the Chinese philosophers. I mean, seriously, man.
It's pretty good.
So they get together, and these are like, top, rich, like governmental influencers in every country. They get together. They get together with a good purpose in the beginning to kind of stop brutal and needless warfare, right? They're kind of like the UN. They started it as a good idea, but that's a different story. Joy she never has a real name, so I'm just going to call her Joy. She's born to one of the members of the original Wise Men Committee. And jump to the early 30s. At this point, kind of most of the original Wise Men Committee's members have died. It's kind of insinuated that the new guard kind of came in and started phasing the old guard out, either by killing them or just got rid of them. And her father is the last one to go. Afterwards, the organization begins to run out of control and kind of just becomes more obsessed with control rather than avoiding war, which is okay. That becomes a theme later on. Instead of letting the world be, they started to try to control everything. They also started these charm schools, they called them. There were like joint operations between America, China, and Russia.
Ooh, joint operation.
and these were like spy schools basically, like, and in the mid 30s, Eva would go to one of these. She would go to one of these joint charm schools, and it's even insinuated that Joy taught there as well, and that she actually taught Eva when she was there. It's a nice little touch.
I like me some Eva. Eh? She has the zipper. Comes right down there.
Je ne sais quoi. World War II starts, and the philosophers, as they're called now, they make a pact that deals with the post-war reconstruction, and also to help defeat the Axis powers. This is where the philosopher's legacy comes from. This is that big pool of money that they pulled together.
A philosopher?
Was
FDR a philosopher? Was he on the council? We don't know.
We don't know. Maybe. I know that
Colin.
The philosophers did not like Kennedy, which is not a surprise. Not a surprise at all.
Not a surprise. A lot of people didn't like the Kins.
But
you're banging Marilyn Monroe, not a lot of people aren't gonna like you,
These factions, they kind of start. Factions start appearing in the philosophers, so like it becomes more of a union of nationalism. So there's like the American philosophers now, and there's the Chinese philosophers, and there's the Russian philosophers, and they kind of agreed to like, okay, we'll pull money together, and then after the war is over, we'll disperse it all back, and we'll fix whatever is broken. That doesn't really work too well. 1941, Joy meets Zero. His real name is David, which is funny because that's Solid Snake's name.
Hey,
David. Well, the character and the actor, they're both named David.
What are the odds?
No, David O. His name is David O. That's where Zero comes from.
Is it really?
Well, Zero's real name is David O.
Oh, Zero.
Yeah. Hence, that's why they call them Zero, because the O.
Okay, so Zero is not Big Boss, and it's not Snake. He's the other Snake, right?
Who's Zero?
Or wait, hold on. Shut up.
Zero's not a snake.
Oh, okay, never mind. I was thinking of Venom. Never mind. I'm stupid. I'm an idiot.
You are dumb.
You're an idiot.
So Zero, who goes on to be Naked Snake's commanding officer during Snake Eater, he meets Joy. They meet each other while they're in the SAS together, and they lose a fellow comrade. They never name the guy, but he's lost. Yeah, he's lost. He's lost in a combat. He's lost in a combat zone. And Zero gives Joy a little pin. Like the SAS used to have this little pin and a patch. It was like a dagger with wings, and it said, "Who dares wins." I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. But that will come back later. But she keeps that pin close to her. She wears it all the time. She wore it during Snake Eater. She wore it when she died. But that will come up later in Metal Gear Solid V. 1942, the Cobra unit is formed to play a pivotal role in key Allied victories. The philosophers they helped create the Cobra unit. Cobra unit. I mean, you could probably remember. I mean, if you look at the Solid series of games, as in like the Solid Snake series, everything is kind of explained by nanomachines, son. Right? Except for Psycho Mantis, except for ESP in the series, pretty much everything is explained. And of course, like the Cobra unit is kind of like the pre-modern nanomachine, with the parasites, which we'll get into later. Or like they found these people with these supernatural powers, like the end and the fear, you know, and the sorrow. Well, the sorrow still, ESP is unexplainable in this series. It's just like sometimes ESP just happens. Okay.
Metal Gear is just X-Men. Let's be honest. Snake is just Wolverine.
Yeah. Let's see.
Logan.
All right, 1943. It's getting a little further within the World War II. Acting on false information from the Russian philosophers. So this is when like infighting starts between the philosophers. Joy is sent to Los Alamos to assassinate an alleged Nazi saboteur, John von Neumann. Turns out this is not true. This is just the Russian philosophers sabotaging the American philosophers so they don't build a nuclear weapon. But before the mission started, Joy found out that she was pregnant. And she ended up...
What a twist.
I know. Oh my God, I'm pregnant. So she's like distracted the whole time during the mission. So because she's distracted, she gets wounded, and she's in a coma.
Come up with the where does Joy come from? Obviously it's Boss, but where is her? Why do you call her Joy?
Because that was her unit code name within the Cobra unit.
Did they say that in 3?
Yeah, she's Joy. There's joy, sorrow, fear, pain.
Oh right, because she's one of the emotions. That's right. Okay.
And
because Joy is actually a real name. That's why I was confused.
I forgot. Yeah, that's why I just call her Joy, because it's a real name. So it's like, it's better than Boss, because Boss could mean so many different characters in this game.
Oh so. Yeah, you don't want to describe anyone using the word Boss.
Because as they say, there could only be one boss.
Also, Snake. Don't use Snake to describe anyone.
I never use Snake. I use their actual name. Snake. So if I'm talking about Solid Snake, I'm going to call him David. If I'm talking about Liquid Snake, I'm gonna call him Eli. I'm gonna use their real names.
There's this one part in Metal Gear, right? Metal Gear Solid. You know that game? Where
I think so.
One of the Metal Gear Solid games where Boss is talking to Snake. You know what I'm talking about?
Or that one where the Snake is sent in and he has to fight Boss and then he has to kill Boss. You remember that?
Wait, which boss?
I don't know.
Because then you could be referring to actual bosses.
A boss, the boss. There could be only one boss and one Snake.
Kojima.
So yeah, she's distracted. She gets wounded and she's in a coma. She's a lot like Big Boss. She's in a couple of comas in her life.
Yeah, she is. She's the femme fatale Big Boss.
She's always in a coma. Always in a coma.
It's a convenience coma, you know.
Oh no, I'm in a coma. It's like Kojima was like, I gotta write her off for a couple years.
Wait, where was she this whole time? Well, she was in a coma.
Was in a coma?
It must have been in a coma.
But it's so inconsequential because she's only in it for 3 months. So it's like, why even put that there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think just to show, I mean, she's in a couple of comas. I think it's just supposed to show like how she just gets used and beaten and abused by the CIA constantly. Like she's just a piece of meat to the CIA. It's pretty terrible. But afterwards, this is kind of one of the defining moments in her life because she starts to feel really responsible for failing the mission because she feels like if she didn't fail the mission, then the nukes wouldn't have been built and Japan wouldn't have been nuked and the Cold War wouldn't have happened. So she starts to become obsessed with like never failing a mission, which is why she becomes obsessed. Remember Snake Eater, she's always talking to John, think about the mission, finish the mission, the mission. Also, this comes by later. Joy multiple times in Snake Eater, she talks about remember the Alamo. She repeats that a couple of times.
She does say that,
and that's not just referring to the Davy Crockett mobile nuclear platform that she's using, but to this incident at Los Alamos, where she's saying remember Los Alamos, finish the mission. So, Later, 1944, Cobra Unit is dispatched into Normandy to partake in a mission to destroy V2 missile bases. This is one of the most badass moments ever that I could think of, that I really wish they would have made a Cobra Unit game, where Joy gives birth to Ocelot on the battlefield of Normandy. It just sounds like the most badass thing I've ever heard in my life.
Fist fight in a minefield.
It's about as badass as fist fight in a minefield. It's like giving birth on Normandy. What the hell? But she ends up taking a shot to the gut, and they have to do an emergency C-section. So that's why that's where she gets her gnarly snake scar. It was just a really, really messy war system.
Yeah, just like a medic, just like, oh,
we gotta get this thing out.
I don't think I know how to do this.
I'm not even a medic.
I'm just a radio guy.
Why can't you be the medic from Metal Gear Solid V?
Right, he was good. or she, whoever it was.
Whoever it was. Yeah, she has Adamska, or Ocelot, who is fathered by the Sorrow. Twist. Sorrow is the father. And the baby is almost immediately taken by the Philosophers, which is even more messed up. It's like she has this baby on the battlefield, and then the baby is like immediately stolen by the Philosophers.
I mean, you would want that baby. I'm just saying.
I would imagine that she would want the baby. Yes, that's true.
No, I'm saying as a philosopher.
Oh yes, very much so.
The child of Boss that is also born in a battlefield is probably going to go on to be an insane fighter slash
a very good resource. That's probably how they probably either see Adamska as a good resource to train and take advantage of, or as a good bargaining chip to manipulate Joy with, which they do later. It's pretty again, philosophers are terrible. They're terrible people. After the aftermath of World War II, so World War II ends, Boris Volgin, I'm sure that name sounds familiar.
Damn it, Volgin.
The man who was in charge, this is his father, Boris.
Oh, yeah.
He was in charge of laundering all of the Philosopher's funds. So this guy is like, this is not a guy you really want to trust. But he ends up monopolizing all their assets during the post-war chaos. And just launders the money and just kind of hides it and disappears, which is a very, very dangerous thing to do. You're like, that's basically like stealing the Illuminati's trust fund and then disappearing. It's like, how well do you have to disappear?
You got to be real good at disappearing.
Real good at disappearing. And of course, once the legacy disappears, this furthers the dysfunction between the three philosopher factions, because they're both like, you stole it, no you stole it, no you stole it.
And if there's anything that we know about Volgin's son, it's that they're very good at not being really loud and hiding. They're very good at just hiding.
It's true. If a Volgin is anything, they don't telegraph anything.
No,
they're very subtle people. They're very subtle people.
I am going to hide now. No.
So yeah, this moment where the legacy disappears, it adds like a huge, it's like throwing gasoline in the Cold War fire. Because I mean, in the real world it's like Cold War, yeah, but in this world the Cold War was mostly because none of these factions trusted each other anymore. They're like, you stole the legacy. So now it's going to be a game of espionage and information control to try to find the legacy at this point.
Who killed the cheerleader?
Who killed the cheerleader? No.
It's like when you're almost going to launch into a reference, but you decide not to.
You know what?
It'd be worth
it. Because of the growing tensions between the philosophers, the Cobra Unit is broken up. No more Cobra Unit. and everyone returns to their country. So, I mean, just like the Cold War kind of split up East and West, now joy is separated from the sorrow, which is a shame.
Would you say divided from the sorrow?
Sorrow division. That's a good name.
Division, if you will.
1950. This jumps up a little bit. 1950. This is when Joy meets John, or Big Boss. I will call him John because eventually there's two Big Bosses, so might as well just call him John. It's never really explained how they meet. He's like 15 at this point. I don't know how a lifelong espionage super spy meets a 15-year-old and they become mentor-mentees. I don't know how that happened.
How did they meet Eli and V? You know what I mean?
You know, that is very true. Maybe he was a child soldier. It's never fully explored his. He seems like a normal person, but
he's like one of the hardest bosses in that whole goddamn game for some reason. In Metal Gear 5, fighting Eli.
Oh, really?
That first encounter, for some reason, he's like flipping around and I kept dying. I was like, why am I dying? And it made me more mad because I was just like, you're a little fucking kid.
Yeah.
Get back here.
You're 12, dude. Stop.
You do your fucking homework.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I mean that's a good theory. Maybe he was a war orphan. I mean that is a cycle.
Also representing band name.
War orphan.
Yeah.
Orphan.
Orphan
and Dolphins.
I'm getting further away from good band names.
1951. Joy is exposed to high levels of radiation during an atomic test. This happens multiple times within her life too. She's constantly, again, I think this is just showing just like she's just used and abused. She's like, you know what? You're gonna get irradiated 3 times in your life. You're gonna be in 2 comas, and she just does it with a smile on her face, right?
And this is where it's unlike X-Men, where she doesn't actually get any powers.
Someone does, but Joy and John, disputable. It's John might have gained some sort of ability from his exposure. But there is another character within Portable Ops that did. We'll get into her later. Actually, we'll get into her.
How dare you talk about PSP games with me, you son of a bitch.
Dude, Portable Ops
that's awesome, a sore spot.
Well, we're going to talk about it eventually. You'll learn about it. It's a cool game. The gameplay isn't that great, but...
it's a great game. I mean, don't play the game, but just like watch
it on YouTube. It's not that great. The story is cool. 1953... Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin dies from a supposed cerebral hemorrhage behind closed doors. It's disputed, but I'm like...
Would you say it was behind the closed doors?
It was what?
Was it behind the closed doors?
Behind the closed doors. Behind the closed doors.
Behind the...
But he was... It was insinuated that he was assassinated by a spy master named Skullface. He doesn't have a face. I like Skullface. I don't think you like Skullface. I really like Skullface.
I didn't hate him. I didn't think he was as strong of a villain as any of the main villains in any of the other games.
We'll get into V when we get into V, but that's a different story. But yeah, I mean, his story, I mean, it's Metal Gear, so he had a really tragic backstory. He got mutilated and skin melted off.
Everyone's
normal, day-to-day Metal Gear trauma.
It's like in Metal Gear 4, where just like every single boss you fight is like, okay, so let me tell you about her.
My theory with that is none of that stuff ever happened to the Beauty and the Beast unit.
You think? You think it's all?
No, it's all VR imprinting, because the amount of detail that Drebin goes into is impossible for anyone to have.
Are you doubting Drebin?
I'm doubting that he's a Patriot spy. First of all,
wherever he wants, that tank.
He's a Patriot spy. Why trust him at all? Anyway, we're getting off track.
Yeah,
we'll get to that at the very end of this entire series.
How could we ever get off track talking about Metal Gear Solid timelines?
I know.
Join us next week on Kingdom Hearts.
Oh my God, no. That timeline is just, they involve time travel, and at that point I'm out. I'm just like, time travel? I'm done, man.
Because then there's not a timeline.
It's not a timeline anymore. It's like infinite possibilities. I give up. I give up, man. 1954, a year later, at this point, John is rendered sterile during the Bikini Atoll test. This is where, like, I think if this kind of comes in Portable Ops, it's just like he's so incredibly charismatic. He can just like turn enemy soldiers to his side so easily, and the villain in Portable Ops has some sort of like mind control ability with his voice. It's kind of insinuated that John may have that ability as well, but anyway, he's made sterile regardless.
You're too charming. You're sterile.
Okay, you can control people's mind with your charisma, but no babies, all right? 1957, a little girl named Elisa is caught in a nuclear fallout and is taken to a lab in East Germany in which she is subjected to ESP experiments. There she develops and suppresses and develops an alternate personality named Ursula. This is a character from Portable Ops. And I love it because it sounds so far-fetched, but Russia was doing this in the late 50s.
Portable Ops takes place in the 50s?
No, it takes place in the 70s, 1970.
Okay. So Portable Ops and Peace Walker take place in the same decade.
Yeah. Peace Walker's 74. But yeah, it's just this little girl who is irradiated, and she gets kidnapped and experimented on for her ESP stuff.
Standard.
But that stuff did happen though. Like
it's true.
Like that's what's so great about Metal Gear, because it's
I've seen it
rides that line between like hyper realism and magical realism. It's like, no, stuff like that happened. Like they did ESP tests on little children in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, men who stare at goats. Yeah.
Well, we did it, but we didn't kidnap children to do it, so it makes us marginally better.
Yeah.
Those poor goats.
Just because you weren't caught kidnapping children doesn't mean you didn't kidnap the children.
Amen to that.
I bet about 3 or 4 of them in the back room. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's where you get all those amiibos.
Yeah. give me amiibo.
You like amiibos? They got amiibos in my van, huh? It's getting dark real fast. All right. 1959. Joy abandons John in the middle of a mission. Just leaves him, which kind of it really pisses John off. It kind of like traumatizes him.
Yeah,
like because in the beginning of Snake Eater, like when she pops up again, he's just like, "Where the hell have you been?" It's obviously like,
damn it.
What the hell? Totally leaves him. She was called away by the president himself to be part of a series of secret missions to basically, how am I going to put this? They want to sabotage Soviet projects as well as try to recruit Soviet scientists and Soviet officers and stuff like that. The CIA refuses to help, probably out of like a sense of bitterness, or the CIA are assholes. I mean, they're assholes in real life, but in this series, they're assholes. So because the CIA refuses to help, Joy uses her remaining philosopher connections that she has to kind of to start placing sleeper agents to start recruiting Soviet scientists and stuff like that. Let's see, through the sleepers, she learns that again without CIA permission, she learns that. Let me see. don't know if she learns that, but she ends up infiltrating a Soviet Union research facility and learns that their Sputnik 5 system, which was like their, in the space race when everyone was trying to get into space first, which was all just a big Cold War ploy for cultural control. Learned that the Sputnik 5 actually had a pilot ejection system, so like basically like the guy could seem like he's flying up into space, but he'd actually eject out.
Shagohod.
Shagohod. She reports these findings to NASA, but the CIA ends up intercepting, taking credit for the discovery, and blaming Joy for misinformation that had happened previous. So basically, this is another instance of the CIA. This is actually kind of when the CIA starts actively trying to screw over Joy, and at this point, she still doesn't really care. She's just like, I'm just doing the mission. Again, she's like obsessed with the mission. Her motivation, even I don't fully understand her motivation by the end of her death, but I think that's the point, because like every character kind of tries to interpret her what she did and why she did it. I don't think we're ever supposed to know. But at this point, the Soviet Union halts supply of aid to China. Now this is more of like the philosopher factions doing it, again, trying to put a stranglehold on weapons development in other countries. And because of this, the Chinese philosophers, they begin kind of a plan to infiltrate the Soviet Union and retrieve the philosopher's legacy, because they learned that Volgin, this is Yevgeny, this is Boris's son, he somehow inherited the microfilm. In the original design document, it said that he killed his father for it, but that's never mentioned in any official canon. But it would make sense that he would kill his father to retrieve to steal the legacy. He seems like that type of person.
Yeah.
He's probably the purest like monster in the whole series. He's just
definitely a man. I never ever, that was honestly, I think one of my problems with his character was he had no redeeming qualities.
No,
I did not. I wanted to kill him so bad.
But like, that's why I think that's why I love him so much, because he's the only character that's like that in the whole series.
Yeah, like,
everyone's shades of gray, but he is. But you have to have that pure darkness to kind of juxtapose against gray characters. You know what I mean? And Volgin is like that. He's just evil.
I love the boss fights where it's obvious you're fighting against someone who's tortured, and it's like you feel bad. In some ways, Metal Gear is almost like a just a really, really long version of Shadow of the Colossus.
It really is in a way, because the whole series is like the player, not the characters, but the player is just like John in Snake Eater. You're forced in these situations where you have to kill these people, and you don't know why. You don't necessarily agree with it, but it's the mission. It's the game to do it. It's the mission. Just like Joy, you have to complete the mission. Why? Because you're playing the game. And the game is set forth by the scene, and the times, and the people in charge, and that's kind of what the whole game's about. Like,
and every time you kill, I don't think I've ever made, and I never thought I would make the comparison between Metal Gear and Shadow of the Colossus, but every time you kill Colossi and Shadow of the Colossus, or every time you kill a boss character in Metal Gear, right? There's always that that part where you feel bad, because then they're like on the ground and they're wounded, and they're like telling you their life story or whatever. And like in Shadow of the Colossus, there's just that like really beautiful, like the music's playing and they're like toppling over and there's blood everywhere, and it's like, woo, and you're like, God damn, did I do the right thing?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Like when you kill Sniper Wolf, you're like,
but why did you do it?
I don't know.
Because it's the game, right? It's the mission.
The game told me to.
Yeah, the game told me to do it, and you did it. So the Volgan takes a wicked crossover.
Metal Gear Colossus.
He takes the legacy, and he begins to. His plans are so minuscule. Like all he wants to do is just overthrow the current. Pun?
Is that a pun?
What did I say?
Current, because how he uses electricity.
Kurabana. He uses it to overthrow. Like his motive is just like to get rid of the regime and replace it with another regime.
That's another reason why I don't like him that much, because he's not only he has no redeeming qualities and you hate him, but he's not a complex character.
No, but no. See, that's the beauty of it, because he represents like the purity of the theme, which is the scene, which is just like the Joy. She's going along because that's what the times dictate. She's going back and forth. She just does whatever the mission is. And Volgan's the same way. He's just playing along with the scene. He's just, get rid of this regime, replace it with another regime, because that's how it's always been throughout history.
Yeah, but she's at least somewhat charming and charismatic.
Yeah. I'm talking purely. I'm talking purely like thematic here. Like,
yeah,
I think he fits well within what they're trying to do. Because if they had a villain who was like gray, they already have a villain who's gray, Joy. She's a perfect gray villain, because your mission is to kill her, yet she's for all intents and purposes, she's your mother, and she's your mentor, and she's your friend, and your mission is to kill her, and you pull that trigger. John doesn't pull the trigger; the player pulls the trigger. So, like in Volgan, he just represents the unending wave of the times. Like he's just like, I'm always gonna be here. Things are gonna be fucked up.
Yeah, I think that he's like he's like one of the only villains in Metal Gear where when I killed him, I was just like, fuck you. You know, the other ones, it's like, man, you didn't know his backstory. Hold on.
Like Vulcan's backstory. He has money and he wants to take over the world.
He was a dick.
Yeah,
that's it.
Which is, it's really funny because it also plays into like how Zero is so obsessed with James Bond movies, and Volgan is like the quintessential like
Bond villain,
bad guy. Why is he a bad guy? Because he wants to do bad stuff. That's it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you why I don't like to do good stuff. Because I like bad stuff. I'm a bad guy.
Also, Zero, at this point, Zero meets and recruits Skullface after Skullface defects from the USSR. I think Zero is, at this point, is either still working for the SAS or he's working for the CIA. Either way, he recruits him to kind of like be his number two, but like his secret number two, which kind of continues. And also, this is not really fleshed out at all, but Zero ends up adopting an orphan, probably a war orphan, because that's a reoccurring thing in the whole series.
A orphan,
and raises her in secret. First of all, why would anyone do this? Like, what kind of weirdo adopts a war orphan and is just like, I'm gonna turn you into a super spy later in life, but I'm not gonna let anyone know. But yeah, she grows up to be Paz eventually. She's just a little girl.
Paz is dead.
Paz is a sad story. Paz is super dead.
She blowed up.
She got blowed up from the flow up.
Like more blowed up than anybody that ever got blowed up.
So blowed up that pieces of her skeleton are stuck in Venom's skull. That kind of blowed up. 1960. Terrible. 1962 NSA codebreakers Adam and Eva defect to the Soviet Union, which I love this because this actually happened. Straight from the headlines. 1960, 2 NSA codebreakers. Effect to the Soviet Union. Adam is actually Ocelot. Eva, though, the actual Eva, not the Eva we know, but the Eva whose identity was taken by Eva. The original Eva, we don't know. She's just, that Eva was just, it doesn't matter who that person is. The original Eva probably got killed by Eva, and she took her place.
Took her bike.
Took her bike?
Oh, give me your bike.
What you do? That's my hat
give
now.
Me your name
That's totally my hat. 1961, Joy is involved in the Mercury project, which was the first manned flight into space. And there she meets Strangelove, Dr. Strangelove, one of the biggest on the nose names probably ever.
Oh, I know.
It's not as on the nose as Hot. No, Hot Cold Man. That's on the nose, man. Get it? Because Cold War. Because he's making it hot. Because
I don't know. I would say that Die Hardman.
That one's up there, man.
The most on the nose. I think it's even worse because
his name is John Blake McClain.
Not everyone knows about Doctor Strangelove as a movie, right? That's a little bit to the point. Maybe if this was we're talking old movies, but like in modern culture, everyone knows what Die Hard is.
True.
Not everyone knows what Doctor Strangelove is. So I'm just saying, I think Die Hardman is the most on the nose goddamn Kojima villain of all time. This isn't about Death Stranding though.
One day, maybe it will be.
Maybe we'll finish it.
So he meets Strangelove. They begin a repertoire of some sorts. It's kind of like a mentor-mentee thing, but Strangelove ends up like falling in love with Joy, unrequited love.
Strange.
Get it? Strange, because in the 60s that was considered.
He's Dr. Strangelove, right?
She, Dr. Strangelove.
I mean, she is. I mean, so not only is that is pretty on the nose, because not only is that it's a Doctor Strange, but it's also It's Strange Love. It's like, come on,
and they literally stay in the game. Like, it's because in the 60s, same-sex attraction was a strange love. So it's like a double entendre. Doctor Strange Love.
I totally forgot that Doctor Strangelove was a chick, and that.
Yeah, she's like albino, man.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Very strange character. Tragic end, though. Oof. Yes, she ends up like taking off before the Soviet Union to get into space first. So she was planned to be, the first human in space, but they wanted to put this is great. They wanted to put a window on the side of the ship so that Joy could look out. And Strangelove was like, if you put a window, it's gonna, it'll mess with the re-entry trajectory, and something bad could happen. Of course, something terrible does happen. But it's funny because if they would have not, because this is a kind of a pivotal moment in her life, because when she looks out that window, she at that point she's the first person to ever see the Earth in one as one. So when she sees that, this is also like this is like kind of a beginning point, and it kind of like comes to a head in Metal Gear Solid 2. Where the whole game is kind of a reaction to like postmodern relativism. So at this point, Joy sees the world as one. There's no up, there's no down, there's no east, there's no west, there's no borders, there's nothing to be relative about, because I actually have to take it back. There's only things to be relative about, because there's no my nation, his nation. There's just one planet. So at this point, she becomes kind of obsessed with the idea of making everyone feel the way she did when she was looking at the Earth as one. And of course, and then everyone kind of takes this. Zero takes this, and he's like, "Oh, make the world one. We'll control everyone, right?" And John's like, "See, the world is one. We'll just turn the whole world into a battlefield. This will be super great. It'll be fun." But the window is kind of responsible for this whole thing, because if the window wasn't there, she would have never seen the Earth.
Why were they in space again? Why did she go to space?
Because she's expendable.
Oh, so she was just there was just an experiment?
Well, this at this point, the Mercury project was real. This was the America trying to get into space first. It was called the Mercury project.
Right.
They sent her first. And if she succeeded,
then they would send the real.
No. If she succeeded, they would have been like, "We did it! Look." If she failed, they'd been like, "No one needs to know about this." You know what I mean? Because it's the philosophers and they're assholes, and she's expendable and she doesn't mind it. So because the window, of course, the landing trajectory's off. She ends up crashing. Spoiler. She's in a coma for 6 months.
Again, that's the movie Gravity.
Still never saw that.
That's actually good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it like Speed?
It's better than Speed.
What about Angel Dust?
I personally think Alfonso Cuarón can do no wrong. So
I don't know what that is, but all right.
He's here. Give me this. With small little from your sponsors. We sponsored the video. Alfonso Cuarón, director of The Little Princess, Children of Men, Prisoner of Azkaban, Roma.
Children of Men. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that's his best movie. But Gravity was also pretty good. Yeah, no, he's done a ton of fucking movies, but like every movie he did like Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban, which
that's
is like
my favorite one.
The best, by far the best Harry Potter movie. And did you ever see Little Princess?
No.
It's a great movie. It's his first one. Anyways, blah blah blah. All I'm saying is, I'm not saying Gravity's better than Children of Men, because it's not. Because Children of Men is an amazing film.
It's a great movie.
But this dude's a great director, and he just knows how to direct the fucking movie. And I could kind of almost see Kojima doing a Gravity.
Oh, movie. he likes I know he likes that director because when he saw Children of Men, that's what inspired him to do those long one shot takes in Metal Gear Solid 4.
The Children of Men gave birth to the tracking shot.
Yeah, I remember reading an interview, like he saw that movie and he's like, that inspired most of the cinematography of Metal Gear Solid 4. Just that one shot action scene, and it's like, yeah.
Well, thank you for that segue. Back to you.
So, like I said before, if Joy failed, they would just be like, yeah, whatever, push it under the table.
Nothing happened.
That's what they did. They brushed it under the table. They basically used the CIA is so spiteful. They're like, oh no, she wasn't involved with the Mercury project. She was involved with the Bay of Pigs. Yeah, she was in the Bay of Pigs at the time. It's like, it's very nice, guys. Just throw her under the bus like that.
Right.
And of course, with Bay of Pigs, this is when the CIA and the Pentagon really start having their own little inner feud, which it was a real thing and still is a real thing. Like the Department of Defense
because
and the CIA.
Stranger than fiction, you know. There's like these parts of the Metal Gear timeline where it's like, oh, that's just dumb, and there's like that part's real.
No, it actually really happened. Actually, a lot of this timeline is real. It's just fictional characters put into it, you know.
Fictional characters.
Yeah, and this, I mean, DOD versus CIA, also with like the GRU and the KGB in Soviet Union. There's just infighting everywhere.
The KGB waits for no one.
You will see that in the Metal Gear Solid 3. There's a lot of infighting that goes on there. Let's see. John and his comrade, never given a real name, but later his code name is Python. They undertake a secret mission in Vietnam, during which Python is presumed killed in action. He comes back. He's a character in Portable Ops. He comes back.
Is John going by Snake at this point?
No. He adopts Snake, Naked Snake, at the beginning of Virtuous Mission.
Okay.
At the beginning of Snake Eater. Yeah. He's just John or Jack. His nickname is Jack, but since there's another Jack, I just call him John.
Yeah, that's what's even more annoying. It's like, yeah, you could do that, except then you're thinking about Raiden, and you're like,
exactly. That's why I'm just like, I will never call him Jack. I mean, Joy calls him Jack, and Zero calls him Jack. That's just because they're really close friends. But Jack is a nickname for John, so we're just going to call him John.
Kojima needs to explore the different names that Americans have. It's not Jack, John, Justin,
Jack, John,
George.
Adam, George.
What's his name? James.
Damn it. I don't think there's a James, actually.
Well, there is now.
There is now, brother.
Brother.
Brother! 1962, we're nearing the end. 1962, Zero, he's working for the CIA now. He uses a mole to help Dr. Sokolov and his family defect from the Soviet Union. Of course, Dr. Sokolov is working on. He's already a really famous rocket designer and scientist. He wants to defect. So he's like, oh, Zero's like, all right, I'll help you defect. Sokolov was like, take my family first. So they do. And when they extract Sokolov, that's when the Cuban Missile Crisis happens, and basically the Russian philosophers are like, you give us Sokolov back, we'll pull all of our missiles out of Cuba.
Sokolov was basically like an Einstein, right? They kind of had him like they had him dead.
He's
to
just
rights.
another.
Like,
he's
you
just
build
another
this shit for us,
and we won't kill you.
Yeah. And he's like, I do not want to build that thing.
Well, it's funny because he's kind of like a proto Otacon, where like Sokolov just wanted to build space rockets, and the scene is like, no, you're making nukes. And he's like, I just want to go to space, and like, no, you're making nuclear weapons for us, okay? If you don't, we're gonna kill your family. It's like,
hello, my name is Sokolov. I do not want to make better and powerful weapons.
I want to be good now.
Family. I just like a math.
I love America. Wait, no, I don't. I'm afraid of it. So yeah, they're forced to send Sokolov back to end the Cuban Missile Crisis. Just another example of the times being manipulated. But this time, like, it's like the philosophers have always manipulated like behind the scenes. But this is like them kind of coming into the forefront, because it's like the Cuban Missile Crisis. I can't imagine what that was like, right? In 1962, like the closest we've ever gotten to the whole world being potentially nuked. Like, tight.
Yeah.
Because if Russia would have launched, we would have launched, and then everyone would have not been happy.
I mean, kids in schools had a fucking like a they would be like, hey, Cuban Missile Crisis is happening. What do you do? And they're like, we hide under the desks.
Under the tables.
It's like, because we all know these desks obviously stop nuclear weapons.
Made in America, right?
What they should have been doing is hiding in fridges, okay? Because we all learned
they were lined in lead, so
Indiana Jones.
They were lined in lead, dude. They were lined in lead. Okay, I don't want to hear it.
Nuclear blast. There's no kinetic energy in a nuclear blast. No. It's just all atomic.
Science. At this point, Joy carries out a covert mission in Russia to basically if I remember this correctly, there was a Russian agent in Russia, surprise, who was please, who was
what a twist!
The twist. That's the twist. The end. Who I think was like turning over the sleeper agents that Joy was sending in. So the American philosophers sent Joy in to assassinate this Russian agent. Spoiler: that Russian agent turned out to be the Sorrow. Dun dun dun.
Oh my God!
So in a dramatic fashion, they meet in Selenoyarsk, where Snake Eater begins, on that same bridge where Joy totally destroys John and he falls down. And if you actually put first person mode on, you can look to the left and see Sorrow's body to the left of John. It's really,
what? Yeah. You mean at the beginning when you first meet her and she like wrecks your shit with the CQC?
That's where she was forced to kill her lover.
She CQCs the shit out of John.
Just destroys him, dude. Absolutely destroys him.
Don't try to CQC boss. You know what I'm saying?
No, not at all.
She'll CQC the hell out of you.
And at first they're both like, I don't want to do this, but of course, like I said before, the philosophers they're going to use their son as leverage. So they're like, if one of y'all doesn't kill the other, if the equilibrium of the scene isn't restored by one of you guys dying, we're going to kill your son. So Sorrow's like, kill me. And she does. She shoots him right in the eye. Which is funny. She shoots him in the opposite eye that John loses. It's a nice little like symmetry.
Well, and then of course, we wouldn't want, kill him so his son can live and go on and to kill thousands of people.
Right. I mean, but
thank God.
Thank God. But ironically, Ocelot is the one who. I mean, it's Ocelot and Solid Snake end up saving the whole world together, even though they're enemies. It's great. We'll get to that eventually, but Ocelot's kind of an anti-hero. I love that guy.
Yeah, can't hate Ocelot
or
his fucking arm.
I'll explain all that. That makes total sense later.
It does. It definitely makes sense.
It does. If you look at it, it does.
Even though, hold on, Metal Gear 4 is one of my favorite games of all time. I still I love it. Like it's like Evil Dead. You know what I mean? It
does have a kitschiness to it.
Like Metal Gear is the Evil Dead of military games. No, that comparison is bad. That's bad comparison.
We're getting close to the end.
Figure it out.
So at this point, after Joy kills Sorrow, which is sad when you say it out loud.
It's also so I love like Kojima is like so not afraid to be as on the nose as possible.
I love it because it has this multiple layers.
The symbolism is just in your dick.
I love it. But there's so many layers as well. It's like a really deep, convoluted story, but like with this top layer of cheese, and it's just like multiple layers of like because usually like Joy defeating Sorrow, she got that nickname for like loving battle, so it's like her love of battle killed her sorrow, so she fights eternally.
Well, at least it's more successful than with Nomura and Kingdom Hearts, where it's like it's trying so hard to make everything make sense and have symbolism, but it just doesn't really, and
it tries.
A huge mess.
It works sometimes, and when it does, it's like that's cool. But it's too much like darkness, light, friendship, darkness, light, heart, friendship.
Yeah.
Like, all right, that's cool. So Zero along with Joy, they create the Fox unit. And John is recruited into Fox. And along with Fox, Zero takes Skullface and creates XOF, which is basically like it's literally the shadow of Fox. Where
isn't it like Fox?
It's like backwards.
What?
But like Skullface he sets up moles. He gathers intel. He cleans up things that need to be cleaned up. He takes care of bodies that need to be disposed of. He's like the unseen custodian of.
He's a cleaner.
Yeah, he is the cleaner. And it's so funny because there are actually moments in Snake Eater that make you go like, oh, I could see how Skullface could. Okay, that's interesting. So maybe Kojima doesn't pull all this stuff out of his butt, but most of it he does. He's a genius with pulling stuff out of his butt, honestly. 1964, Joy, using a Philosopher's Spy network, discovers that Sokolov was sent back to the research facility to complete the Shagohod project. Shagohod. So then the CIA comes up with this plan that kind of has multiple layers. The CIA wants, one, to get the legacy back. Two, they want to kill Joy.
Kill Joy.
They want to kill Joy. Oh my gosh, it's another reference. God dang it.
Yeah, it's
too good.
It's like a fist fight in a minefield.
It's like a fist fight in the minefield. But they want to reclaim the legacy, and they want to kill Joy. So the CIA themselves, there's one specific person, but it turns out Hot Cold Man is responsible for specifically planning the Snake Eater operation, which includes like setting Boss up as a villain and then sending John in to kill her, and then getting the legacy back, all that stuff. We'll get into that whenever we get into Snake Eater. But then the Chinese philosophers send in Ava to pretend that she is a Soviet spy when she's actually a Chinese spy. She's a double agent. So now everyone's hands in the pot. So you got the Russians, you got the Chinese philosophers, and you got the American philosophers in this nice little hot zone of trying to get the legacy back, and that's when the game starts.
Metal Gear. Huh? What?
Huh? Any questions?
That was very, very informative. I did not know most of that.
all of her backstory is like in codex, and mostly in codex. I listened to a lot of codex during these playthroughs, which I usually don't. I usually don't listen to a lot of codec conversations.
Well, because there's already so much exposition.
I know. There's so much dialogue already.
It's like
there's so much dialogue.
You know what's kind of crazy? I don't know if you've. I'm going to make just a quick detour, but have you ever watched Death Note?
Yeah. It was a great show.
Okay, so I'm actually currently I missed the bus on this one, right? So I'm watching this again.
How far are you?
Again, I'm like, I don't know, like 10 or 12 episodes in or something like that. But what's really hit me about that show is how much the dialogue and cadence and the way the like exposition works. It reminds me of Metal Gear.
The potato chip part? Have you gotten to the potato chip part? Where he hides the thing in the potato chip bag, and then I'll write a name, and then I'll take a potato chip out, and I'll bite the potato chip. Like this is amazing.
But it reminds me of the cadence and the tone of the monologues. Yeah. Remind me so much of Metal Gear because it's these little clever bites of monotone explanation that it's just like, he thinks I'm going to do this, but actually what's really going to happen is I'm going to turn around and do this because I've kept a trap in this thing of my door, blah, blah, blah. And he can't get past that because, and then like it goes to L and L's talking and he's like, but somebody with that kind of knowledge of this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, for some reason, it really, really reminds me of the exposition parts of Metal Gear where they go on.
Especially in the first one and the fourth one, especially the fourth one where it's just like, SOP system. All right, I'm going to spend 10 minutes talking about the SOP system.
Yeah.
As you know, it's that it's weird because I usually don't like the as you know type of exposition, like one character talking to another character who already knows this and says, as you know, blah 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 blah. But for some reason, I don't mind it in Metal Gear.
Well, as long as it's well written and it's interesting,
or at least well presented interestingly, like
because
they're not the best writers.
But. And that's why like because like we were I know this is kind of fucked up, but we were putting on Death Note for like because our kid stays awake and he's like he's trying to go to bed and he only falls asleep when there's something where the tones of the voices that are talking are very monotone. And so we've been watching a lot of Death Note and you know I guess I've missed the bus on this one because everyone has seen this fucking show and everyone loves it already and they're like,
it's a good show.
How have you never seen? My dad is like, you've never.
It does kind of peter out in the middle. I feel like it should have ended in the middle, but it's still good.
But just the delivery, like you said, like it's just because it's so interesting what they're saying.
Yeah, it's like what they're saying is interesting enough that I can overlook badly, like clinically bad exposition. Like on paper, it's bad, but for some reason, it's like engaging. It's like it's just engaging. Yeah. I don't know why. Like you said, like with like the Evil Dead, there's a sense of like honest campiness to it. Like it's not. They're not trying to be. Metal Gear doesn't try to be campy for campiness sake. It's not like Birdemic or something. It's like The Room, where like he thought he was legitimately doing something. He thought he was making Citizen Kane, like legitimately. But
hi Snake.
But hi Snake. But like, there's the campiness is so endearing. It's like when Kojima does this campy stuff, like you know it's coming from like a good place, and he's not just doing it to like garner campy points or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
it's weird in like other games too. Like this scene where in Metal Gear 4, like the beginning, where like the dude like shits himself, and it's like in any other thing, I'd be like, this is so bad. This is
like,
so
why is this happening?
Yeah. For some reason, because it's that Kojima charm, it pulls you through it, and you're just like, Kojima, you crazy bastard. Like, I don't even know if he has a real sense of humor or.
He does. I've watched.
Well, I know that he has a sense of humor, but I don't know if it's good. I just know that he thinks it's good, and he puts shit in.
That's enough.
Quite literally, puts shit in games, and it's like it's funny, right? And you're like, yeah, in your way.
It's funny because it's like by itself, it's not funny, but like within the context of like, again, like if anything about Kojima's style, it's about juxtaposing, and he juxtaposes this like super hyper realistic military mixed with this weird magical realism mixed with a guy pooping his pants.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this weird mix that's like it should not work. It's like oil and water, but like for some reason, it's like this is a really interesting, engaging oil and water.
And then it's even when you're like, is he gone too far? I don't even know if this is funny. This is kind of uncomfortably like awkward. But then like something will happen really serious right afterwards. And you're like, fuck.
Well, you know where he got that from? Like, he got that from. I remember reading an interview. He got that from his love of Hitchcock movies. Because if you watch Hitchcock, he's a master of like
cheese
having
and
like this really like intense like tension, like a bomb in the suitcase under a table, and then tension, and then levity.
Yeah.
And then tension, and then levity, and he just like created this roller coaster. And if you watch like the cutscenes, even like some of the gameplay pacing, like has that, especially Snake Eater. Snake Eater has really good action levity pacing because it's like really intense boss battle and walk up a ladder for 3 minutes and listening to like a vocal rendition of the theme song, and then boom, you have to fight helicopters, and boom, another boss fight, and then you sit down and have a conversation with Ava, and it's just like this.
And that's sort of my thing is I think pacing is more important than anything. I think it's more important than like anything that could possibly be in a game or a movie or a TV show, because if pacing is off, then you're not going to be having fun. Even if the characters are cool or whatever, like if the pacing is off, that's where it falls apart. And I think that's, like you said, Kojima is really good at sculpting pacing for a game, because like you said, he throws, just when you're bored or just when you're like, what is fucking happening, he throws something at you that's like, okay, cool. And you're like, okay. You're like, oh, cool. It's just like, yeah, it is. It's admirable, to say the least. And you know, I just want to thank you for being on our show today, because I'm the real Metal Gear Solid fan, because I have this collection.
My gosh.
And it's real. This is real. You guys.
On the 360 too. All right, man. Well,
and that concludes this
my
episode.
Laptop's about to die. Yes, this concludes today's lesson
on the history of Metal Gear.
The history of Metal Gear. That was just episode 1 of 8 episodes.
Holy fucking shit.
So yeah, thank you for joining us on the Lali Lule show.
Thank you for teaching me, you know, and letting me and you know, filling my head with the knowledge of filling the gaps in my brain that could have been filled with information that was useful.
Yeah, man, trust me.
To survival.
You don't need it. All right?
How to fix a car battery, just replaced with, you know, fucking bosses, space journeys. Thanks again, folks.
Laters!